Welcome to the podcast. Today I have MZ joining us. We're going to talk about getting a grip on your business and some golden nuggets that you might be able to take with you from the podcast. Thanks for joining me, MZ.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Butch. I can't wait to get started and try to give the benefit of the wisdom that we have to your listeners. That's great. I love that you're doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. So, MZ, can you give our audience a little bit of background on what you're doing, maybe a little bit about EOS and how businesses are benefiting from it?
Yeah, so I'm a lifetime entrepreneur. Started my first business at the age of 19. In 1979 is when I started my business. Along that journey, where I'm at now, I've never really worked for anybody else. I've discovered, Butch, I am officially unemployable. So I've always had to do my own thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
started an event production business, and I ran that for about 40 years. I specialized in doing lighting and staging for live events. I did the sports celebrations for the city of Chicago when teams won, like the Bulls. If you ever saw The Last Dance, that was me working on that. Worked with the presidents, United States, when they came into town, the Chicagoland area. I was the person the White House called for that, and worked with rock bands, Fortune 500 companies. So along that journey, Butch, I realized that it's really difficult to run a business. And there had to be a better way to run a business. So doing my research, I came across the book Traction. And I read Traction and I said, this is for me. I have to put this into my business. So when we implemented Traction the first year, and I can't say this is true for everybody, but for me, we increased our profits 112% the first year that we put Traction into our business, used EOS. So when I sold the business, being a lifetime entrepreneur, I needed some other things to do. And I worked with an executive coach who was brilliant, really helped me out because I was a little bit lost after running a business for 40 years, as you probably can imagine, Butch. So he discovered that I knew EOS and he said, MZ, become an EOS implementer. His name was John. I gave him a big hug and said, I love you, John. So I've been doing EOS for about 7 years now.
Yeah, so we're going to dive a little bit into EOS, but a lot of businesses struggle trying to grow, right? There's a lot of certain things, but just like before we started recording, we were talking about sports, mainly hockey, right? And a lot of times, even from the youth development, because I got 4 kids in it, or even the NHL, sometimes there's just minor little changes along the way that businesses need to change as well as the sports, the athletes, but just minor changes and worked on over a period of time and have structure for it that end up, making progress. Can you walk us through some of that where you see some businesses and problems, maybe some pain points that they run into, and then maybe a little bit into the EOS process on how you build it?
Sure. So, EOS is really about coaching and facilitating teams. It's not consulting. It's not about getting into a business and telling business owners what to do. Butch, through my history, I have brilliantly solved the wrong problem too many times. So in EOS, I don't do that. I help the teams flush out where their pain points are and where they're struggling. Through my experience, I've come to the realization there are really two main points of doing business successfully. And you actually touched on both of them. One is, how do you resolve issues? Now, there's two types of issues. There's the external issues that you solve for your clients. That's why they call you. That's why you're in business. Then there's the internal issues, the ones that you really need to solve to help your business run more effectively and efficiently, to be able to help your clients solve their issues. The second part is processes. Setting up and running on actual processes that are documented, rolled out, and then followed by all. Because your business, every business has processes. They're either intended or they're intentional. And when you can get intentional processes working for you, so everybody is doing what is critical the same way, the right way, every single time, that's just vitally important for businesses to master and be able to implement into their business. So there's many different parts of running a business. I think focusing on being really good at solving the issues, lining them up, making them go away, and then developing the right processes so everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing the best way, the right way, every single time. By the way, my experience is that helps the business owners scale, become more profitable, and have more fun because everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Here's an example. Had a client that I started with, this is a few years ago, coming just as COVID was starting, and we worked all the way through COVID. And our first meeting, our first sessions together, the visionary, so the person that ran the business, would randomly get up and just leave in the middle of the session. Like he
Oh,
wouldn't even
wow.
say anything. He'd just get up and walk away, Butch, right? And I looked
Mm-hmm.
at the team and they says, MZ's so much going on in his brain. He's got so many different things that he has to work on. He just has to go. I'm like, okay. Now, fast forward maybe about 9 months from there, we're at a quarterly meeting. So now we're running EOS. We have the foundation in place and we're really starting to execute it. And to start this quarterly meeting, the visionary says to me, MZ, I just have to tell you, it's so wonderful to be able to sit here and be present and work on my business, knowing that I have the staff in place to be working in the business so I could do what I need to be doing with you. It is absolutely amazing. And those are the types of things that happen when we start executing on EOS.
So, while you were talking, and I know when I read through the books, one of the analogies that came to mind when talking through all that is, you know, for those who are listening to this, back in the 90s, there was a movie called Days of Thunder, and there was Tom Cruise in it.
Tom
His name was
Cruise,
Cole
right?
Trickle. Yeah. And so, traction and the process in the EOS product reminds me a little bit about when the crew chief was trying to reason with Tom Cruise, the driver, and saying, "Okay, we're gonna test this out. You're gonna run 50 laps your way. You're gonna run 50 laps my way." And so I don't know if you remember this scene, but like, so when Cole Tricker ran his way, he tore up the tires. They burned through more gas and everything. And then they did it the crew chief way. The tires were still pristine. They still in great shape, and they still had leftover gas. And so when I think of EOS and the processes that are in place, that's what I think of. And so it's again those minor differences that go a long way. Where now we talked before we were recording. Some of these actually give even just 1 hour back to that business owner or the employees per day. Um, Maybe even just spreading out some of the workload or giving that time back and give that, and so they can do it however they wish, right? Whether it's taking the day off, but now they just reduce 5 more hours, so they go from 50 hours a week to 45 hours a week, right? And how much of an impact does that make on these businesses?
Oh, you're so right. Now you're going to make me want to go back and watch the movie. My wife Barbie loves Tom Cruise. Now I'm going to go
Sure.
back and watch that
Mhm.
scene for that
Yeah.
for that very part. And
Oh.
I think as business owners, we have to understand that we don't have to do it all. We don't, and we can't, and we shouldn't. So, how do you get the people that you need around you so you can go do what you want to do? Most entrepreneurs start a business because they're passionate, Butch, about something specific. That's why they want to be in business. They don't want to be in business to run the business, but there are people out there who are very good at doing that. And you have to find those people so then you can go out and build your business. No, I like to think of the example of um, Walt Disney and his brother Roy, right?
Hmm.
It was really Roy Disney that built Disney. It
Right.
was Walt that had the vision that could see a theme park in the middle of a swamp field. But if
Mhm.
you asked Disney, you asked Walt, how much money's in our checking account? He'd say, I go ask my brother Roy. I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got
Right.
to find the people that are better at what you need to have done than you are. And then you have to set the boundaries so they can go succeed. So if you really want to start building the culture and you want to have an intentional culture, what I have found, Butch, is you have to care about what your people care about if you want your people to care.
Hmm. So,
Think about that.
yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Now, dive in a little bit deeper when you meet with some of the businesses out there, and they've never been through any of this before. And so, do you find that there's some challenge to get somebody to understand there is a process to all this? There are different things that need to be worked on. You can't just go out there because some business owners think just throw spaghetti at the wall and whatever sticks, it works, right? And so, what's that conversation like with that business owner or board of directors in some cases of trying to say, hey, there's a better way to do this? Like, how's that conversation with them?
Yeah, and I think back to your example of Days of Thunder,
Yeah, yeah,
and um, what what happened there is Tom Cruise became coachable in the
yep.
moment when he
Hmm.
realized that he didn't know everything, and there's other people out there that he can learn from. So,
Hmm.
first of all, the the individuals or teams that I meet with, they have to be coachable. They have to be hungry. They have to want to learn. They have to want to be better at what they do because there is a better way. And once I take them through what we call a 90-minute meeting, where I unpack EOS in 90 minutes and I show them from the beginnings to the end what the journey looks like and what we cover, a switch goes off in their mind and they could realize like where their misgivings are, where their misunderstandings are, where they need to be stronger, where they're weak. And it's really amazing because we'll do something called an organizational checkup real early in the process, Butch. Several times my clients will take this assessment and they'll come out on a scale from 0 to 100%, 65% efficient in the six key components that make up EOS. 65%. And I just kind of chuckle because I know along the way there's going to be some negative discovery for them. The things that they don't know will come to light. And often when I go back and take the same assessment with them a couple months later, they're usually around 20, 30% because
Wow.
now they know more of what they didn't know. And I have to encourage them, that's okay, right? Because now we have a true foundation of where we need to start and the areas that are weak. Getting them started is really a discovery process, but they have to be open to wanting to learn. And I think a lot of business owners, Butch, let's just be honest, let's just call it out, right? We're high performers and we wouldn't be where we're at if we weren't good at what we did. And sometimes it's hard for us to let go and say, there's a better way, or there's other people out there that have been along the journey and have some wisdom. Maybe I'd benefit from learning from them.
Hmm. For sure. For sure. Now, have you what's that conversation like with businesses that you help, start from scratch, maybe they had some baseline, but you work them through an EOS process and they get their little rocks and they work on the rocks and they end up building, over a period of time and you have this great relationship with the clients mutually beneficial and you get to a certain point. What is like the top 4% of that point where, hey, they've done all this. What's the next level for them? What does that look like? Because obviously there's always room to grow. Because even if we go revert back to hockey, right? We got the Patrick Kanes, the Ovechkins of the world, right? All these elite athletes, there's always this little margin for growth, right? And so what's that like talking to businesses when they've made it, they got these processes in place, they know how to work these rocks, and then how do they get to that next level?
Yeah, sure. It's a journey. And when you start EOS, we go in and we break a lot of eggs, and there's a lot of discomfort. I encourage my teams, especially early on, there's no growth without friction. Whatever you're doing, if you're going to drive to the local store, your tires have friction on the road. There has to be friction, and it has to be okay. Gino Wickman, the author of Traction, Get a Grip books, talks about how when he was first starting and he had his 10-year target, his implementers that worked with him early on asked him, Gino, how are we going to get there to the 10-year target? And he truthfully said, I don't know, but I know that we're going to get there one quarter at its time. So starting out, it's a little bit slow, building that foundation. Once we're up and running, which typically takes somewhere around 18 to 24 months, we're getting together now on a quarterly basis in a rhythm where if you pictured a flywheel that was turning, these quarterly meetings that we have every 90 days is just more grease on that flywheel. So it's churning faster and faster and faster. So depending upon where the entrepreneur and the team would like to go will dictate what's going to happen on that back end. I do know that most of the teams that I work with, once we're at the 2.5 year period, that assessment that I talked about, the organizational checkup, they're at 80, 90%, maybe in the low 90s by that time. So, what's going to happen, right? Well, they're either going to expand, maybe they're going to sell, depending upon what their long-term target is, will really dictate the direction that they'd like to go. So there's a story I liked to share
Sure.
with teams early on. I have a client that I worked with for 4.5 years. Eventually they sold, and they sold to a PE firm. Once they sold, one of the partners, probably the smartest man I've ever met, but she's just brilliant. He called me up to thank me for all the help. And I said, no, 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 no. Understand that you did all the work. I just kept you in the guardrails to keep you moving forward. He says, no, MZ, what you don't understand is 6 months before we engaged with you, we tried to sell our company and we couldn't. We engaged with you. We ran it for 4.5 years. The PE firm wanted to buy us because of our culture and our processes. And when they purchased us, this is truth, this is what they shared, Butch, we got 25 times the multiple that we couldn't get 4.5 years earlier when we couldn't sell our business,
That's
right?
impressive. Yeah.
So depending upon where the business wants to go, what their long-term target is, will depend what they're going to do after that time period. One of the things that I do like to do with my teams is really dig down to and into what is the purpose of you being in business? What is the difference that you want to make and the impact that you really want to have in the world around what you do? And when I do that work with the teams and they start realizing that it's not about money, it's not about a better car, a boat, or more property, it's about making a difference in people's lives. And once they realize that they have that purpose, and I know you get where I'm going with
Oh
this,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for
You
sure.
know,
Let's keep
yeah,
going.
totally, right?
Yeah.
It makes their jobs, it makes their business far more meaningful for the culture when people show up. Yeah. So that's kind of what happens along the way.
Sure, sure. And I know we were talking about this before we had recorded, and you could go as deep as you want as far as the podcast goes. But one of the topics we had talked about is you have a true inspiration of doing this, and part of that reasoning is that if the businesses could get their business right, it affects every other area in their life in a positive manner, and I sense that that's a lot more rewarding to you than the actual business itself. But like, talk about your inspiration a little bit, and then what you've seen with businesses you worked with on that positive impact in other areas of their life once they got their business straight.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Early on when I first started, it was about getting paid and doing EOS and mastering it and being able to facilitate really well. Along that journey, I came to discover that there's a purpose in there. And that purpose is exactly what you said. I couldn't say it any better. It's about changing people's lives. And my clients, after we were running or started to run EOS and it's getting implemented and the flywheel is going, Butch would come up to me and say, MZ, I am happier now in my life than I've ever been. And this, I'm quoting
Yeah.
clients, right?
Hmm.
They would hug me. They'd be near tears. My home life is now better with my husband, wife, whatever, than it ever has been. And that's because my business is running well now. It's just making such an incredible difference in my life. And having that purpose for me and seeing that transformation, which I would do this for free, but I can't. So, just having that ability to help people realize that there is a better way. And you need, as a business owner, it's so important to find that purpose that I spoke about. What is it that you're really doing it? Why are you doing it beyond money, beyond your imagination of what it is? And if you could find that purpose and define it, and then intentionally go out and find those people that align around that purpose, you're all going to be sitting in the boat facing the same direction, rowing in the same direction, and you're just going to go. It starts, though, with finding why you're really doing what you're doing. And, I think that's overused somewhat, the Simon Sinek, and, that's absolutely brilliant. I don't think we do a very good job as business owners to really drill down what that why is. And being in the room and helping entrepreneurs and their leadership team assess what that why really is. And when the light bulb goes off, brother, I'm telling you, it's just wonderful. And the
Hmm.
team just engages at a whole different level.
And you had shared before we started recording on that note too, where it's even though you've worked your career, right? You built a business, you sold it, then you said, "Hey, I have intellectual property I could share with other businesses," and so then you start working with EOS because of the structure it provided, but today you wake up every day inspired because it's not a job anymore, right? You're out there trying to help people and keep moving, and so no longer it's a job; it's an inspiration for yourself and definitely that growing aspect. And I tell you, once even though I've been in business 21 years, much less than you have, but there are days though, like you had said, I would do it for free for some of my clients. I would literally like just say, I will help you. You are a great business. You're doing all the things that we're asking you to do. And then I would do it for free on top of that. But like you said, we can't, there's licenses and whatnot, but still like it becomes powerful in business, and every business on the planet is like this when you finally get to that point. And I tell you, like your inspiration is showing true on this podcast, and I definitely appreciate your time sharing some of that wisdom, sharing some of those case studies and stories, and spending this time with me. But if businesses wanted to continue this conversation of what we had went through today, or they're like, "Hey, MZ, you hit it right on the head. I felt it in the heart. I got to do something." How do they get in touch with you and start this process?
Sure, sure. So, I appreciate that, and thank you for letting me do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the podcast. I don't work with everybody. I'm selective on the people that I work with because I have to be aligned with them. I'm not for everybody, and not everybody's not for me, and that's okay, right? I will help people if I'm not right for them, find somebody that will be right for them. And the best way to get a hold of me is at my email address for EOS, which is, sorry about the noise. I want to make sure that I get it right. So
sure. Yeah, not a problem.
my email address is mz.ziffra at eosworldwide.com. So that's the best place to get a hold of me. I have several emails, so I
Yeah,
just
sure.
want to make sure I capture it
Yep.
right.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll put that in the show notes. And I know you're on LinkedIn as well, so I encourage
Yes.
on the professional side of LinkedIn that they reach out to you there too, and then see if it's selected. But but EOS is global, and so like you said, you're selective on who you work with, which is I think every business needs to figure that you're not all things to all people, and because there's other EOS providers, you might be able to talk to this business and say, hey, you know what, you're not a good fit for me, but we have two colleagues in the Chicagoland area, for example. They're probably going to be a great fit. Well, I'll make an introduction for you, and we'll send them right in the right spot. And so, and that's what's great about having the network, whether it's an EOS network or a business network. And so, I think the business network is strong, and the EOS network is strong, and what EOS is trying to provide, and along with MZ providing for the businesses and the years experience. This has been wonderful. I would love to have you back on at some point. We'll talk about updates on what you've been seeing in business trends and opportunities that businesses are seeing growth. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was my pleasure, Butch.
Sounds good.